Good evening. Welcome to episode 4 of History of the Promise Bible Handbook, presented by He Promise Publications. Today is still, and it's rare that I do two on the same day, but we're doing it today. It's still Monday, July 24th, 2023. We were out here earlier. This way you guys get an evening glimpse of the river. I was going through the book. I told you guys I like to stop at that 20-minute mark. I don't like to go too much further than that. And after I finished episode 3, I started flipping through and realized I didn't have that much further to go. So we're going to go ahead and knock the rest of this timeline, setting the stage, Earth and the timeline, out. I do believe that we finished with the captivity, which ran from 586 BC to 70 AD. That period of time started in the years before Christ and ended 70 years after his time here. So even at the 70-year mark, he was still here because he died at 33 and a half years old. That's not saying he was born on that first year. So, during that time he was not here, and the message of Christianity was starting to be spread by his disciples in his true form. So the next time is the time of the Maccabees. Now this is something that is not in our everyday Bibles. You may hear of it from time to time. You may not have ever heard of the Maccabees at all. But they are that split time. They're that time in between, that gap moment. Like, what happened during this time? They are that time. And it's important that we know this. And to be honest with you, coming down the pike, because we're doing a lot of extra books, the rest of the books of the known Bible, plus other writings that have not been given to us, the regular people. You have to dig for them, and digging for them is good. So Maccabees will be coming up to go a little bit more in depth, and you'll see once we get into this Bible study how this flows, how it is a true learning and ingesting type of study. So the time of the Maccabees was from 164 BC to 40 BC. Now I may pronounce some of these things incorrectly, but we're going to go with it. So there were 3 eras of the time of the Maccabees. From 140 to 110 was the Seleucid vassal time. The time of the kingdom went from 110 BC to 63 BC and 40 BC to 37 BC. Which means we had some crossover time. And then the client state of the Roman Republic was from 63 BC to 40 BC. So at this point, we're 40 years away. The Roman Republic is kicked in, and they're doing what they're doing 40 years before we slip into the AD period, or the year of our Lord. Okay? So the Maccabees, and I'm pronouncing them in the more English version. In Hebrew is Maccabeim, okay, were the leaders of a Jewish rebel army that took control of Judea, which at the time was a province of the Seleucid Empire. They founded the Hasmonean dynasty. They rededicated the temple in 164 BC. Now, understanding this is the temple that had been rebuilt when the Judean tribe had come out of Babylon, and it was being rebuilt. This is the second temple, not Solomon's first temple, but the second temple. And so the Hasmonean dynasty were the ones who wanted to rededicate the temple in 164 BC, which had been rebuilt prophetically by the command of Cyrus. We'll get into that within the whole Bible study, okay? During their reign, the Maccabees conquered Judea and forced the Edomites, also known as I'm not going to even try to pronounce that. Let's just stick with Edomites, guys, because that word just caught me and my brain isn't working like that right now. It's evening time and my brain is on another tip at the moment. So they forced the Edomites, who were the descendants of Esau, the brother of Jacob / Israel, to convert to Judaism. Now here's the thing. This is something we're going to go through when we're in the book of Genesis. We had these twins that were born. I'm not going to go full into the story, but Esau was the elder of the twins. Jacob was the younger of the twins. In the Hebrew way, the oldest son gets the birthright. He gets handed all the big stuff, okay? And we're gonna go over this story a little bit later in Genesis, because he didn't want it, and so this became a problem. Well, his people down the line, I'm talking way down the line, are forced. They were not following the Judean system. They were not part of Israel. They were doing their own thing, and they were forced to become or to follow the Judean religion. Forcing anybody to do anything causes issues. Anyway, and you guys see, I told you, I will go off on a tangent. So they were forced to convert. This forced conversion would prove to be a key point in their downfall. But, the book of Obadiah, and that one's already out, explains a lot about the downfall of Esau and his descendants. It's so hard to stay on track when I got so much stuff in my brain, but I'm still on track, okay? So they were forced to convert. They weren't Israelites. They were forced to convert, and it was not a good thing for them. That's the best way to put it. The time of the Herodians, that's another era, was from 37 BC to 92 AD. So we got a lot of crossover points, okay? The Edomites, after their forced conversion, began to integrate well within the government of their captors, Rome, assuming high-ranking positions within the Hasmonean government, especially during the end of the Hasmonean dynasty, when Rome had become the ruling power. It was with the help of Rome that the Hasmonean kingdom's century-long reign, 100-year-long reign, was brought to an end, and the time of the Herodians began with Herod the Great, the Edomite, assuming the throne of Judea, appointed by the Roman Senate, as Rome held the entire area as a client state. Herod the Great ruled as a vassal king of the Jews until 4 BC, at which time his kingdom became a tetrarchy ruled by his 3 sons. The Herodian tetrarchy, the rule of Herod the Great's 3 sons, lasted from 4 BC to 6 AD, when Herod Agrippa I replaced the 3 as sole ruler under Rome. Many rulers followed until the last Herodian monarch, Agrippa II, died, and Rome assumed full power over his domain. Now, here's the part, because that's pretty much the end before we start Genesis, and we're going to start Genesis tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. You've got this group of people, and you've got to know the whole story, and that's what I say, you got to know the history. Jacob and Esau have some issues, and I'm going to say both are at fault. The way it went, how it went down, both were at fault. And they never truly came back together. Towards the end, Jacob kept the birthright, and the line of Jesus came through him. And the line for, our salvation, for the most part, came through him. Esau went up into the mountains and his people became the Edomites. And everybody just kind of did their own thing. And then, and then you got this forcing that we just talked about. Then you're going to force me to do something I don't want to do. The Edomites weren't kicking it with Israel. They were just doing their own thing. They weren't feeling them. But they weren't messing with them either. You know what I mean? But now they're forced to do something they did not want to do. So they took advantage of it. And were literally used. Vassal kings, they were just there. They had no real power. Rome was running this. But since they had converted them, made them convert, they were considered Jews when they were not. They had no loyalty to the Jewish people. So anyway, I like I said, I can go on and on about that story. So I'm going to rein myself in. We're at 10 minutes and 50 seconds. This is not going to be another 20-minute one. I'm going to read one final thing. I just wanted to look at it and see if I really want to do this. But this is necessary. And I'm going to read it today. And I'll read it again tomorrow when we start up Genesis. And it comes from the book of Luke, the third book of the book of the gospel, the book of Jesus' life on this planet. And it's Luke chapter 18, verses 9 through 14. And it says, "He spoke also this parable to certain people who were convinced of their own righteousness and who despised all others." In the parable, 2 men went up into the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee, and the other was a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and prayed to himself like this. This is the Pharisee now. "God, I thank you that I am not like the rest of men, extortionists, unrighteous, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I get." But the tax collector, standing far away, wouldn't even lift up his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, "God, be merciful to me, a sinner." I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but he who humbles himself will be exalted. I want to leave you with that before we get started with the Bible study tomorrow. I look forward to sharing this study with you. And for those who it is for, you're going to see something new. Just like we did. You're going to see something new. And I pray that you find the peace that I have found in it. Not the peace in the world, because Lord knows there ain't no peace in this world. But the peace in the knowledge of the history of the promise. Have a good evening. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning.